So a lot of parents want to know how they're going to integrate nature into their lives and build a habit because it seems like more work. And I say, start with what you already love, start with what your children already love, what you're already doing, and then springboard from there.
Welcome to the Healthy Screen Habits Podcast. I'm Hillary Wilkinson. Whether you're starting your parenting journey with a newborn or looking to connect with your teen on technology, let's learn some new healthy screen habits together. Happy Screen-Free Week! As we move through the week with our goals of screen-free behavior, I wanted to bring aboard someone who can tell us about some of the science behind the benefits of what we're doing this week and hopefully spending a lot more time out in nature. And my guest today can absolutely do that. She is the founder and director of the Ecohappiness Project, whose mission is to inspire and educate families to build a nature habit to feel happier and calmer. She began her career at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and National Academy of Sciences after getting a bachelor's in environmental studies from George Washington University, a master's in government with environmental focus from Johns Hopkins, and a specialization certificate in foundations of positive psychology from the University of Pennsylvania. I'm fascinated to hear more. Sounds like you are well versed in all things eco-happiness, and we can't wait to hear from the best. Welcome to the Healthy Screen Habits Podcast, Sandi Schwartz.
Hi, I'm happy to be here today.
Great. So, Sandi, I'm interested to hear a little bit kind of about your background. You've got this great mixture of natural science and psychology, and somehow it's like bleeding into this digital wellness arena as well. And just tell us everything. How did you get started in digital wellness, and what was your motivation behind founding Ecohappiness?
Sure. So I wanted to save the world, and then I realized nature can save us as well.
Oh,
So it goes hand in hand. We need to do the work so it can help us. So basically, it goes back to my high school days when I cleaned up a dirty river in my hometown in New Jersey, and I was part of the Nature Defense Club. And that really sparked a passion in me to focus on the environment. And I went on to study environmental studies in college. I went on in graduate school to focus on environmental policy and government. I thought I was going to be an environmental lawyer, to be honest, and that it's interesting how life kind of takes you on different turns, shifts and turns. And I ended up more in the realm of communications and science communications. And I did a lot of that at the EPA and then at the National Academy of Sciences. And my main, focus is to educate people about the public understanding of science. So we can tell them that nature is good for them, but I wanted to give them the reasons why and to really highlight the science, because a lot of times people need that evidence and they need years of evidence to do that. Kind of like when you think about mindfulness as one other example of a realm that we now know it's integrated into our health and happiness world. And more people are engaged in yoga and meditation because the science is backing it up. Even though it's been around for thousands of years around the world, we now know that it helps us. So that's the same way with nature. So basically, I was studying all about the environment, environmental protection, but I was also personally struggling with stress and anxiety. And when I look back at my whole, it was in my childhood with sweaty palms in the math class and nausea before school, to chest pains in college when I wasn't doing so well in one of my first classes, first semester. And then it really kind of came to a big trigger was dealing with infertility and preterm labor with my first child. So I also, after he was born, I'm a very type A kind of person. So I wanted to be the mom that did everything perfect, everything right. And I just was too revved up, the adrenaline, the cortisol was pumping through. And I really was experiencing what I now know as postpartum anxiety.
Oh,
So all this was kind of coming together, my interest and love for the saving the planet, and then my own personal struggles. And I then started on this path of research about positive psychology. And that's aspects like mindfulness, gratitude practice, engaging in nature and awe, and really, these ways, these positive ways to make our lives better. So that's where I ended up saying, hey, I can save nature and it can save me too.
wow. That's a beautiful marriage of all things. It sounds like it was a struggle to get to the place that you are. And I'm sorry for your struggle, but I admire that you've taken that struggle and used it to create something so positive for the rest of us. So, as you know, I'm all about the healthy habit building, and the mission of the Ecohappiness Project is really kind of what captured me. The mission is to inspire and educate families to build a nature habit to feel happier and calmer. So my eyes just lit up when I read this, and I've never heard of a nature habit. What is this thing? And you've talked a bit about why it's important, but like how do you define this nature habit?
Well, it's something that we've lost in this current generation. About 20 or so years ago, Richard Louv wrote a book about nature deficit disorder. And he's kind of one of my inspirations to have gone down this research path. And, he found that kids just weren't spending enough time outdoors, and this was causing physical and emotional issues. And this has only gotten worse with screen time.
And I'm
So,
sure skyrocketed with pandemic as well.
yeah. So like any other healthy habit, like meditation or cutting back sugar, caffeine, or exercise, having nature in your life, in your daily routine. And it can just be something so simple as stopping to look out the window, right? Like taking a break from your computer screen and turning and looking at the window and really engaging mindfully in what you're seeing. I mean, out my window, I have beautiful palm trees I'm looking at, and the colors, and to say, well, it's not just green. I see gold, and I see yellow, and I see brown, and I see orange. And so it's really encouraging people to stop and smell the roses and to take what they're doing every day anyway and see how they can incorporate nature into it a little bit more.
Okay.
It can also be something as simple as when you're taking your kids to school on that drive. What are you really seeing on that drive? Do you even remember, the bushes, the trees, the flowers? Instead of just looking at the buildings, what about looking at the clouds too? Maybe there are birds flying that you're missing when you're at the red light. So that's what it's about, kind of
So
taking, assessing your life and bringing a little bit more nature into it.
sounds like just bringing a lot of intention towards noticing nature.
Yes. And that's the first step. You can then go on and say, well, we're going to eat one dinner outside a week as a family. We're going to sit down and find, write down a list of activities we want to do every weekend that involves discovering nature at our local parks or science museums, heading to the beach or the lake, the mountains, whatever it may be. And then to me, the habit, you start small, you start with what you're already doing and keep expanding it and find out what you love. And next thing you know, you'll have a new hobby.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And when do you recommend parents start doing these things?
Oh, from the minute they're born, one of the best things you can do. A few years ago, I wrote a blog post about body wearing and then taking your child outside on a walk while you're wearing them, and so or in a stroller. And from a very young age, it helps develop even something as simple as their vision. So they can get like the dimensionality of being outside versus just staring at a wall or a screen, and the colors and it. The thing about nature that's so powerful is it engages all of our senses.
Mm.
And so a young child, as they're developing, I mean, in every day and every week and every month of a young child's development is so critical. So the more time that they can be really observing and looking and pointing to the sky and it really can expand how they develop.
Right. And I kind of want to tease apart, you mentioned a word that I've seen a lot used in nature studies, and that's this word awe. Can you talk
Yes.
about that a little bit?
Yes. I'm in awe of awe. It was so fun to dive into the research on awe because it's new and it's still developing. And it is this emotion that is very hard to describe. It's magical. It's that feeling when you have chills up your spine and tears come to your eyes. And so it could be like when you're looking at the stars at night and you're just fascinated by how big is the universe. Or it could be music. If you're listening to an orchestra, that can be awe. And so, I of course focus on the awe of nature. And, one of my big awe moments was standing at the Grand Canyon when I was a kid. I'll never forget that moment. And actually recently, I didn't realize my husband's never been there. And my kids were asking about it. I'm like, well, we have to go back there. It's like one of my favorite places in the world to stand. Or, oh, on my honeymoon, we took this daring helicopter ride, which I was so afraid of. But I saw the most incredible visions, out there flying above Hawaii. And so that was awe.
Right.
So it is awe. There's a whole book I actually reference in my book because there's not a lot of material on awe. So I highly recommend Awestruck, I believe is the name of it. Anyway, it's also on my website, but it dives into the specifics of awe. And I have a few blog posts I've written about, how you can incorporate awe activities into your family's routine, and vacations are definitely the way to go for sure.
Neat. Okay, we have to take a break, but when we come back, I'm going to ask Sandi Schwartz how to find out the best ways to get our kids out into nature.
Hi, I'm Amy Adams from Healthy Screen Habits. I have the privilege of running book club, and we invite you to join us each Friday over on Instagram at Healthy Screen Habits, where we discuss books that will help us create healthy screen habits for a balanced life. We have a book that we do every couple months, and we hope you'll join us and enjoy and learn and grow with us.
My guest today is Sandi Schwartz, founder of the Ecohappiness Project and author of Finding Ecohappiness, fun nature activities to help your kids feel happier and calmer. So, Sandi, I would imagine that exploring the activities to include in your book was a lot of fun and probably reflective of your own life. You've mentioned a little bit of your family life. Do you have children?
Oh, sure, of course. and actually, another big reason I wrote this book is, it's a book I wish my parents had for me. And it was something I felt like I needed to do for my children and all children and future generations. So yes, I have a 9-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old son.
Oh, fun. You're in the middle of it.
Yes. Oh yeah. This is easy though. They like to make their own breakfast and lunch, and they're very independent. So it's actually wonderful. A lot easier than those early days when I was having all that anxiety. That's for sure.
Yeah. And so on your website, ecohappiness.com, you have this nature habit quiz. And can you explain what this is and why it's important to understand maybe the types of nature lovers that you have in your own family?
Yes. So a lot of parents want to know how they're going to integrate nature into their lives and build a habit because it seems like more work. And I say, start with what you already love, start with what your children already love, what you're already doing, and then springboard from there. And so this quiz helps categorize kids into 5 different areas. It's a 10 cute little questions, things about, what is your child's favorite after school activity? What's their favorite birthday party theme? And then you'll get an email categorizing them in either creative arts, green exercise, animals and citizen science, travel and adventure, or mindfulness and meditation. So depending on how they answer these questions, and you can do this for each of your children, you can do it for yourself, which is fun too. And then you'll get this list of suggested ideas based on their current interests. So, a child who can't sit still and is very curious and loves to run around, they're going to love adventure. They're going to want to go hiking and biking and paddleboarding and canoeing. And so it's great to start there again with what their interests are and what they love, so that when you say, hey, let's get outside, they're not going to say, no, I want to play Minecraft instead, because, they're going to be looking forward to these activities that they already enjoy.
Right. And I kind of love how this is a technique that we call bridging from technology to the outdoor world. So if you involve your child in this sort of questionnaire and asking them, well, what do you think? What kind of, like you said, what type of birthday party would you have? Or how do you enjoy spending time after school? Then they're going to have more buy-in to the results, and then you can say, oh, and look at what this is directing us to do. So that's a very cool way to marry technology with outside. So do you have like techniques, tools that are in your, your bag of tricks that that we can help make other connections to nature, like good websites or anything along those lines?
Well, what's been really interesting is the way I broke it up, so it allowed me to dig into each of these areas. And so, for example, creativity alone, when you merge creative arts and nature, there are so many opportunities out there to engage in nature. And this can be anything from a child who loves music. They could write, maybe they play the piano and they have a song that they're practicing. They could add their own lyrics that have to do with a nature story, right? And then that gets them into it. If you have a child who loves to draw, sit them outside in the backyard and challenge them to draw the nature scene, as opposed to maybe cartoons inside. And so there's just so many opportunities and ways to, start with what they love, but also challenge them to the next level. And I do think technology plays a role in, especially the mindfulness realm, the creativity realm, and even this child who's interested in science. So some resources, of course, are if your child, for example, is having trouble sleeping, there's wonderful apps out there that allow them to listen to nature sounds, because nature sounds have been proven, like bird song and ocean waves and rainfall. That's all been proven to reduce cortisol and to help us feel calmer. And so some of my favorites include the app Calm, the app Breathe. And I also have one called White Noise. And this was actually very helpful to me when I was temporarily living in a place with a very loud train that would go by. So I would put on, the rushing water sounds, or the fire, sounds of a fire. It was like, it was wonderful. And I just think that they can play around with it. And you can actually add more than one sound to the mix. So it's it's interesting. Yeah. And then also, full disclosure, I've never used this app, but I've read a lot of good things about Piku, Piku, Calm Kids app. And it has all kinds of guided meditations specifically for kids. And not all are nature related, but some are, of course. So those are great resources.
Yeah, I knew you were the right person to ask, which seems ironic to be asking for websites during Screen Free Week, but I kind of want to, project going forward. I feel like these are tools that people can use even when we're not doing this, lockdown of tech.
Yeah. So, and the other thing, I think one of the best bridges from technology to getting kids outside is what's called citizen science. And that's when we get involved in a science research project from the government or a local university or a nonprofit organization. And for example, iNaturalist is a very popular one now, and you can get on there. So an example would be, they ask you to go out and count the birds that you see within, in your backyard, and to take pictures and to indicate what they are. And so all of that data then goes into a bigger system. And so children can play a big role in science, and it really does, even though they're using tech, they're still outdoors.
Yes, and I love how so many great things stem off of this. One, I'm kind of further down the parenting path with than you are. I have older teens, and so you're looking at this point you're looking for possible majors in college or life path type stuff, and you do want to have a very well-rounded approach to what you've experienced and what your passion is at that point. But also, we're in a migratory path for monarch butterflies here.
Oh, lucky
And
you.
so occasionally you find a tagged monarch butterfly, and so being able to go in and log in the numbers on that is always that's a big thing as well. So I totally agree with you with the citizen science. It becomes very much like a treasure hunt on getting the kids out in nature and seeing what they can count or see or do.
And a lot of the older kids have community service hour requirements. So that's another great way to tackle
Right.
that.
Right. On your website, you have this awesome graphic that I really liked. It's a calendar, and it's called the 30-Day Ecohappiness Challenge. And are some of the things that you talked about earlier, I was thinking, like the eating outside and stuff like that. Are there any other things you can just talk about and recommend how parents could implement a few of those?
Of course. And I want to just tell you how this came about. When the pandemic started, I said to myself, how am I going to get through this? What can I do to use positive psychology, to keep my sanity? And so I challenged myself to go 100 days of doing one nature activity each day. And so this 30-day calendar stemmed from that experience. It was fabulous. And I highly recommend everyone challenge themselves. So other ideas would be taking nature photos, keeping a nature journal, painting or drawing a nature scene, visiting a scenic place virtually. That's a good one. Another way to merge tech and nature. They have like wildlife cams around the world where you can actually be under the ocean and see, all the marine life. They also have them where you can watch an eagle's nest. So it's pretty cool. And that's a great way to engage children. Practicing outdoor yoga. Simply watching the clouds. One time, my daughter and I just went to a spot for about 30 minutes. We had a little journal with us, and we each just stared at the clouds and drew pictures of what we saw, because it's amazing what you can see in the clouds. And then it moves and changes. So, there's so many options and for people to engage in. And I hope that they'll head over to ecohappinessproject.com and grab that to challenge themselves and their families. Yeah.
I love it. Okay, so we have to take a short break, but when we come back, I'm going to ask Sandi Schwartz for her healthy screen habit. Special thanks to the Doctors Petty, Laura Hoffman, and Danielle Waters for their financial support of healthy screen habits. It allows us to continue our mission of educating and empowering families to create their healthiest screen habits. My guest today is Sandi Schwartz, founder of the Ecohappiness Project and a person who is passionate about getting people outside. Now, on every episode of podcast, I ask each guest for a healthy screen habit, which is a tip or takeaway that people can put into place in their own lives. And I'm wondering, Sandi, if you have one.
I sure do. So my tip is to balance screen time with Greentime to keep both physical and emotional well-being in check.
Love the rhyme scheme. Balance screen time with green time. And I know, let's talk just briefly. You had mentioned earlier with me something about a green hour.
Yes. So this idea of screen time and green time, you can actually use that to negotiate with your children as well. So, hey, play outside for an hour and then you can get your screen time. So if this is something you're struggling with the kids on the screens too much, you can weave in the green time as that bonus. And, I wouldn't go to the struggle and, point of having to track it all. I know like some people have all that, you can only be on your screen a certain number of times, they have those apps or whatever. But I think that would get a little too intense. You want kids to start increasing their own green time naturally by doing what they love.
Maybe even just in my house, I'm just thinking we have with after school activities, things get really compressed. So maybe it's a screen day with a green day. So it's like maybe, Tuesday, Thursdays are tech days. They both start with T. So, but then Monday, Wednesday, Friday might be green days. So, and then I'm just going with this because then I'm thinking the dinner time conversation is going to be really interesting to talk about. How does your body feel? How do you feel about after having spent time online or on a game or something like that, a virtual game versus an outdoor experience? So I think nothing beats experiential learning. And if you can weave that in, and that's a wonderful habit.
And also just really teaching your kids, and this is important for us too, to step away from the screen, set the alarm every 30 to 60 minutes and go look out the window, go take a quick 5 to 10 minute walk outside, eat your lunch outside, whether in your office or your home. That's what it's about, because it's all about balancing and having those breaks. And it just helps us so much. It'll make you be able to concentrate better. It'll allow you to be more creative because that's what nature does.
Right. It's where we were literally built to be.
Yes, indeed.
Oh, well, I love how your habit addresses the whole person, physical and mental, or physical and emotional well-being. So as always, I will link all of your information plus the websites that you gave, the websites and apps that you gave us tips on in the show notes. And Sandi, I cannot thank you enough for being here today and sharing with us your knowledge of the outdoors.
Thank you so much. It's been great. And I wish everybody all the eco happiness in the world.
Yes. And much success on their screen-free week. For more information, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Healthy Screen Habits. Make sure to visit our website, healthyscreenhabits.org, where you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts or via RSS, so you'll never miss an episode. It's free, it's fun, and you get a healthy new screen habit each week. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate you giving us a quick rating. It really does help other people find us and spread the word of healthy screen habits. Or if you'd simply like to tell a friend, we'd love that too. I so appreciate you spending your time with me this week, and I look forward to learning more healthy habits together.